Anthony Meadows Sr., you are hereby served with a petition for divorce that has been filed by Allison Meadows in the Franklin County Domestic Relations Court. This petition is accompanied by a temporary restraining order that prohibits you from coming within 500 feet of Allison Meadows. Anthony Meadows Jr. or Crystal Meadows, both minor children.
I was speechless. My heart was beating like a drum in my throat. I looked around for Allison. She was nowhere to be found.
Ace of Hearts-Storycast presents a story of love, heartbreak, struggle, resilience, and healing. Gratefulness Unchained.
It was a Wednesday night in early December. I was sitting in a place that over the past 2 years I had found most familiar, the public library in my neighborhood. I live in the inner city, also known as the hood or ghetto in a stereotypical sense. But to me, it was just home. That said, nobody really sets out to live here. Most people who live here do so out of circumstance. Like everyone here, I have my own set of circumstances that have led me to this place at this time and in this moment. The unmistakable scent of old books and institutional floor wax danced with the familiar soft buzzing sound that seems to be common to most libraries. It gently cuts through the quiet. I've always wondered where that buzzing sound comes from. Oh, I guess I should introduce myself. My apologies, that was very rude of me. My name is Anthony Meadows. Everyone calls me Tony. My journey didn't start here. I was born 32 years ago, about 50 miles from here, into a middle-class family. My mother is white and my dad African-American. Dad was a sergeant in the United States Marines. He was killed in action in the Second Gulf conflict. I was 10 years old. While I was devastated upon learning that my dad had been killed, I became determined to honor his memory by becoming a success. I worked hard in school academically, played sports, and graduated with honors. I actually was recruited by a few Division II schools for football and basketball, but I didn't want to spend 4 years riding the bench just to say I was on the team. I decided to join a different team. I became a Marine, like my father before me. But in deference to my mother, I also enrolled in ROTC, which meant I would attend college. I completed college and reported for duty as a newly minted Marine second lieutenant. When I was a senior in undergrad, I met Allison, a curvaceous blonde sorority girl who swept me off of my feet. I fell deeply in love with her. We got married soon after we both graduated and settled in a suburb not far from my hometown. As we worked to establish ourselves, we had 2 children over our first 2 years of marriage. A son we named Anthony Jr., and 1 year after that, a daughter we named Crystal. The Marines found plenty of work for me to do within 50 miles of my home, so I didn't have any stressful travel. Allison was moving up the ranks in her corporate job for a telecommunications giant with a regional headquarters in our area. As I completed my active duty service, I took a rotation in recruiting. I found that I enjoyed working with young men in high school to become better versions of themselves. That is how I caught the bug to become a teacher. I took the classes necessary to gain certification to teach high school social studies as I completed my final year of active duty. I was 26 years old. I then took a job teaching high school history. I also helped the football team as an assistant coach. Allison and I shared the load as we built our home up while caring for our 2 young children. Everything felt right. The next 5 or 6 years went by in what seemed like a flash. Allison was promoted to a middle management position, and I completed a Master's of Arts in Teaching program at our local university. Before I turned around again, I was 31 years old. Tony Jr. was turning 6, and Crystal was starting kindergarten, right on his heels. Allison and I were humming along, paying bills, taking care of the children, and making time for ourselves whenever we could. A few months later, in April, I stayed after school finalizing plans to prep my students for their yearly state-mandated testing. It was also getting close to Crystal's birthday. Allison had sent me details on a few party centers we were considering to host her 6th birthday party. I wrapped up my day and headed home. When I pulled up, an unfamiliar sight greeted me. A sheriff's deputy cruiser was situated in the driveway. When I got out of my car, a deputy greeted me. He was accompanied by a short woman dressed in civilian clothes.
Are you Mr. Anthony Meadows?
Yes, I am, I replied.
Sir, my name is Deputy Collins and this is Miss Hall. She is a civilian process server who will explain the purpose of our visit to you this afternoon. When she is done, I will answer your questions.
Miss Hall then walked up to me and handed me a large manila envelope.
Anthony Meadows Sr., you are hereby served with a petition for divorce that has been filed by Allison Meadows in the Franklin County Domestic Relations Court. This petition is accompanied by a temporary restraining order that prohibits you from coming within 500 feet of Allison Meadows, Anthony Meadows Jr., or Crystal Meadows, both minor children. You are also prohibited from texting or calling the above-named individuals. This temporary restraining order will remain in effect until lifted by a judge in the Domestic Relations Court at your first hearing, which will be held in 10 days. You are advised to obtain legal counsel as soon as possible so that your rights may be protected. Good luck, sir.
Miss Hall then took my photograph, jumped into a waiting car, and drove away. I was speechless. My heart was beating like a drum in my throat. I looked around for Allison. She was nowhere to be found. Deputy Collins then addressed me.
Are you okay, sir? I'm here to escort you inside of the residence so that you may gather whatever belongings you wish to remove. After you obtain legal counsel, they can arrange to have us come back out so you can move the remainder of your belongings.
Why? It was all I could muster in words at that moment. As a Marine, I was trained to deal with sudden change. I remained calm and didn't let my emotions take over. Realizing that Allison was not in or around the house, I knew I would get no answers in that moment. I entered the house with the deputy and packed 3 suitcases of essentials for myself. I loaded them into my truck and went immediately to a hotel to spend the night. As soon as I got settled in my room, I checked online and saw that Allison had taken all of the funds in our checking and savings accounts and closed them. She also closed all of our joint credit cards and had laid a claim on my Marine and school system pension accounts. Thankfully, I had 2 credit cards in my name that she couldn't touch. I'd be okay for a while. I then read through the divorce papers. Allison was filing under irreconcilable differences. It was basically the only option as our state is no fault. Her ambush caught me completely off guard. I was on my heels trying to catch up. I still had way more questions than answers. I looked at Allison's social media accounts. I was blocked on everything. I called my sister, brother, and mom. None of them knew anything. My brother and sister were blocked, but apparently she forgot to block my mother on social media. When I logged into Facebook as my mom, I saw the following post. "Here's to new beginnings," was the caption under a picture of 2 champagne flutes. Allison then announced that after a difficult relationship, she had gathered the strength to file for divorce from me. She asked for privacy during a painful and difficult time. Of course, she was inundated in warm messages of encouragement and support. Just then, one of her college girlfriends wished her happiness with Stan. The comment was immediately taken down, but I saw it. Allison had found someone else. To make a long story short, I got a lawyer and fought back as best as I could. But Allison had prepared her ambush well, and it was devastating. The judge rescinded the restraining orders 10 days after the ambush for lack of evidence. My attorney said they were only done to stun me and throw me off balance while Allison executed her plan. It worked to a T. 3 months later, we went to court to finalize our divorce. In that time, Allison never called or texted. I only saw my children 3 times over that period for court-ordered supervised visits. During our hearing, Allison sat stoic and unemotional as the hearing commenced. She didn't even look at me. But I'm a Marine, I can read people. Her face had guilt and shame written all over it. She successfully got the judge to buy her lie that because I was a veteran, I was unfit to parent Tony Jr. and Crystal due to my potential for PTSD. As a result, the judge granted Allison full custody and only allowed me 2 visits with my children per month. The judge also allowed Allison to keep all of the money she took from our accounts. He allowed me to keep my pensions as I was too young to withdraw from them anyway. He did not award Allison any alimony, but he did award Allison the house and made me responsible for half of the mortgage, taxes, and insurance payments until Crystal turns 18. A total of $1,000 a month for me. I also had to pay $1,500 per month in child support on top of everything else. And with that, the judge banged his gavel and our marriage was officially over. She turned on her heel and walked out of the courtroom. She was nearly running. So let's do some math. House expenses $1,000. Child support $1,500. That is $2,500 per month against my $5,000 gross income. In short, I only have about $1,200 per month left after all of that. I sold my truck, paid off all of my credit cards, and secured 1 more month at the extended stay hotel I had been living at since Allison's ambush. Oh, and about that, yeah, she had her new man in waiting. She wasted no time moving Stan Roberts into my house. He was her co-worker. Her sister told my sister that Allison just fell in love and wanted a quick, clean breakup with me, even if it was wrong to do it that way. So she planned the ambush with her lover. I hung in at work and got through the school year. One day in late June, as I was surfing the internet, I received a recruiting email from a district about 50 miles away, closer to my hometown. They were the lowest-rated district in the state and had received a grant to upgrade their teacher corps. They offered me $6,000 a month and a job coaching football for another $10,000 per year. They also said they would pay for me to get my doctorate, and once I complete it, they will upgrade my pay another $4,000 per month. Completing a doctorate program would take me about 2 years or so with my military experience credits figured in. It was an incredible opportunity. But there was one problem: my kids. In the 120 days since Allison's ambush, she has successfully brainwashed my children into thinking that I left their mother and refused to see them. Their resentment towards me was apparent every time I saw them. They even told me that they didn't want to see me anymore. It hurt. I realized that at ages 7 and 6, they are very impressionable. I knew it would be hard to win them back, but I was willing to try. I didn't want to move 50 miles away for that one reason. Then the Saturday for my regularly scheduled visit arrived. I usually picked the children up at a local McDonald's from my mother, who was allowed to pick them up from my former home. When I pulled into McDonald's that day, Stan Roberts was there waiting with my children. He handled the handoff smoothly, but as the children got into my car, they yelled "Bye, Daddy" to him just before he drove away. I asked my kids about that. Crystal spoke first.
Mommy says that Stan is our dad now and that we should call you Tony.
Of course, I corrected that way of thinking by explaining to them that no matter what happened with their mother, I would always be their daddy. They seemed to understand, but we had a very tense visit from there. 2 days later, I heard a knock on my hotel room door. It was a process server. Allison was suing me to get my parental rights dissolved so Stan could adopt my children and become their father. She accused me of being abusive with the children. Of course, it wasn't true, but the burden of proof was on me. The judge listened to both of our arguments. Then he called each of my children to speak with them alone. Allison had coached them well. I lost my children that day. It was July 2nd. They declared me an unfit parent and dissolved all of my rights to Anthony Jr. and Crystal. In the eyes of the law, I was no longer their father in any other way but biologically. However, they kept the child support and household expenses in place. The judge said I still had a duty to support the children and Allison financially, even after she marries Stan Roberts, which she stated she intended to do later that summer. I never heard from any of them again. That one almost broke me. I cried all of my physical tears and had no more to give. I decided to take the job that I was offered. I went back to my extended stay, formally accepted the position with the other district, and emailed my resignation letter to my current district. I then packed everything I owned into my very well-used Chevy Silverado pickup, checked out of that hotel, and headed here. I signed my new contract and received the $10,000 to coach football in one lump sum. That helped me secure a small one-bedroom apartment and a few sticks of furniture. July then turned to August. My new inner-city school was a far cry from my previous one in the suburbs. Rundown structures, no air conditioning, and inadequate heat. But there were also genuine teachers who cared about their students and a small community of parents that worked to make the school as warm and welcoming as possible. The classroom where I would teach U.S. history to 10th graders was as bad as one could imagine. I rolled up my sleeves, and in a few hours I had the space looking like a classroom. At football practice, I helped the head coach manage player schedules and drills. I also enrolled in a doctorate program at a nearby university and began those classes in September. My increased salary now left me with $2,200 per month after paying my ex-wife to take care of kids who are no longer legally mine. Despite that, I scratched out a daily existence. I ate a lot of ramen noodle dinners, but at least I ate. I couldn't even afford a computer to participate in classroom discussions or complete writing assignments. And that, my friend, is what has brought me to this small public library branch for the last 14 months. Every day I show up here at around 6 p.m. I grab all of the books I need and do research for the first couple of hours. I then use the last hour to log into a library computer to submit coursework or answer discussion questions from my professors. I usually packed a peanut butter sandwich and a sliced up apple in my backpack, which was my dinner. I generally ate at about 8 p.m. in the snack area of the library. The librarians usually watched my table for me. I was about 2 months into that routine when I saw her for the first time. She was sitting quietly at a study table all by herself. She looked like she was no older than 7. She was at least partially Hispanic. Her clothes and hair appeared to be clean, although her clothes were older. She had just enough of a winter coat, but it looked like if she grew another inch, the coat wouldn't fit anymore. Every now and then I would see her reach under the table, break off and eat a small piece of a Pop-Tart. The Pop-Tarts that are served as breakfast in the local schools here. She always stayed until the very last minute like I did. I guess we both had a lot of things to do, a lot of things to avoid, or maybe just nowhere else better to go. For weeks there we sat, each of us working away in our own little worlds. Then on a particularly cold day in November, I got up, grabbed my sandwich from my backpack, and walked to the snack area. She was standing there, looking up at the vending machine. She didn't see me walk up. The potato chips she selected were stuck in the top of the machine. I could see tears beginning to well in her eyes. I may not legally have 2 children around her age anymore, but when I did, I could tell when they were hungry. And this girl was very hungry. Seeing her predicament, I decided to speak to her. "Is everything okay, miss?" I asked her. She looked up at me with the sweetest big brown eyes and pointed up. I then pretended that I had just seen her stuck bag of chips. "Let me see if I can help. By the way, my name is Tony." I extended my hand and she shook it with her tiny, delicate hand.
My name is Carolina, but everyone calls me Leena.
She said in a soft voice that held a hint of a Hispanic accent. I gently shook the machine and her chips fell gently into the pickup tray.
Thank you. I see you here every day. Don't you have a family?
Leena asked with a bluntness that only a child her age could get away with. "I don't have one," I answered bluntly. "I'll tell you what, Leena, would you like to sit with me?" I invited her. After a beat or two of careful evaluation that only a child can accomplish, Leena said okay and pulled her chair up to my table. From her backpack, she pulled out a half-eaten Pop-Tart and a bottle of water. I pulled my peanut butter sandwich and apples out of my bag. "You know, Leena, since I don't have a family, I always end up with too much food in my backpack. Would you like half of my sandwich?" I said as I extended half of my sandwich to her in its plastic bag. She didn't hesitate and accepted the bag.
Thank you, Tony.
She said with appreciation.
Why don't you have a family?
She asked as she ate the sandwich and her chips. "Well, I used to have one," I replied. "I had a wife and 2 children about your age."
I'm 7.
The girl said shyly. "Really?" I asked. "My son is 7 and my daughter is 6. They live in another city."
What happened?
She asked. "My wife left me and took them," I replied honestly.
That's sad.
She replied. "How about you? Do you have a family?" I inquired.
Just my mom. She's working right now, so I come to the library until she's done at 9.
"I see," I replied. We finished our food and we both got back to work. I needed to use the restroom, and after that I planned to ask Leena if I could give her a ride home. But when I came out of the restroom, she had already left. I didn't see Leena again for a few days. I had been packing a whole extra sandwich and apple the last few days. I decided to keep doing that until I saw her again. Finally, I saw her at her usual table on Friday of that week. When she saw I was there, she came over and sat at my table. "Hi, Leena, where have you been?" I asked.
I was sick, but I'm feeling better now. Can I sit at your table?
The angel-faced girl asked. "Sure," I said as I made room for her. Leena worked diligently on her homework and then worked on her reading exercises as I worked on a project for my statistics class. At 8 o'clock, it was snack time. I invited Leena to join me. She squealed with delight when she saw I had brought her a whole sandwich and apple. After the library closed, Leena insisted that she could make it home and declined a ride from me. To be honest, I was very interested in meeting a mother who would leave her 7-year-old daughter to fend for herself every day. Things went on like that for the next couple of weeks. Leena always sat at my table and we had snack time, but she always insisted that she could get home safely on her own. One day when I arrived at the library at 6 p.m., Leena was sitting on the bench in front of the door looking disheveled and crying. "What's wrong, Leena?" I asked her as I sat next to her on the bench.
She's gone and I can't find her.
Leena said through tears. "Who is gone?"
My mom.
She replied.
When I got home 2 nights ago she was gone. It's happened before but she always came back. There's nothing in the house and I don't know what to do.
I put my arm around her and asked, "Can I help you look for her?" She nodded her head. I helped the diminutive little girl into my truck, and she gave me directions to their apartment building. It was about 3 blocks away from the library. The whole city was equally rough, so their building wasn't much better or worse than the others. She unlocked their 1-bedroom apartment and opened the door. There wasn't much furniture. A couch, a table, and a lamp. A double mattress was on the floor in the bedroom, along with a small lamp. All of their clothes were in baskets. The small kitchen was barren, with no food in the cabinets or the refrigerator. The bathroom was in serious need of cleaning. I made a decision. "Leena, I want you to put a few days' worth of clothes in one of these baskets. You can stay with me for a few days while we look for your mother."
These are all the clothes I have, and they need to be washed.
This child literally had 2 changes of clothes. We were going to fix that. My Marine training kicked in under stress. My mind slowed down and my vision became clear and enhanced. That's when I saw a small envelope under the mattress. I immediately walked towards it, picked it up, and opened it. The envelope contained Leena's birth certificate, social security card, and other important papers pertaining to her. I put the envelope in my pocket. We then proceeded to my apartment, which was only a few blocks away.
Do you think we'll be able to find her?
Leena asked. "Yes, sweetie," I instinctively said. For a split second, I thought I was talking to Crystal. "Right now, let's get you settled in and we can grab dinner."
Will we have peanut butter sandwiches and apples?
Leena asked as we entered my small but cozy 1-bedroom apartment. No, I laughed. "That is library food. Let's hit McDonald's." Leena's face lit up, and for a few moments, the grim child, who always seemed to have the weight of the world on her shoulders, instantly turned back into a 7-year-old second grader.
Really?
She asked. "Really?" I confirmed. Leena and I ate at McDonald's and then returned to my apartment. As Leena showered, I ran down to the laundry room in my building and put her clothes in the washer. I then took a closer look at the documents that were in the envelope. Carolina Salazar Reyes. Mother, Rena Salazar Reyes. Father, unknown. Okay, at least I had a name to work from. I brought Leena's now clean and dry clothes to her so she could get them ready for school. Thankfully, I had a let-out bed in my living room sofa. I made it up for Leena with soft blankets and pillows. She fell fast asleep as soon as her head hit the pillow. The next morning, I dropped Leena off at her elementary school and headed to work at the high school, which was 2 miles away as the crow flies. Once I got to work, I pulled our school resource police officer aside and filled him in on what had occurred the previous day. He made a call and a detective swung by the high school to talk to me. I gave the detective all of the information I had on Rena Salazar Reyes. It turns out she had an arrest record for misdemeanor solicitation a few years ago, but other than that, she had not been in any trouble. We then rode over to the apartment. Leena gave me her key before I dropped her off at school. It was just the way we left it the previous evening. The officers talked to the neighbors, and they indicated that Rena left the building with a man about 4 days ago and never returned. One of their neighbors was looking for Leena, but she had taken refuge in the library, only returning to the apartment to sleep in the hope that her mother would return. I thanked my lucky stars that I found Leena in front of the library that day. She would be safe now. The detective called a friend at Child Protective Services. After some discussion, they granted me temporary authority to care for Leena until her mother can be found. Our resource officer was heading to his office to call the principal at Leena's school to advise her that I am now her temporary guardian. I headed to my coaching office to work on some paperwork during my planning period. Then I got someone to cover my last 2 classes and drove over to Leena's school to meet the CPS representative and the police detective. Leena's principal got us settled in a conference room and then sent for Leena. Her face lit up into a bright smile when she saw me.
"Carolina, we are doing everything we can to find your mom,"
the police detective said.
"We hope that we will have news for you soon."
Okay.
Leena said.
Will I get to stay with Tony?
Well, that is partially up to you.
The social worker chimed in.
Is that what you would like?
The other social worker said. Leena didn't hesitate.
Yes.
She exclaimed.
Tony and I have been friends for a while now, from the library. He always makes sure I have something good to eat. He helped me when Mom first went missing and I love his apartment. It's cozy.
The social worker thanked Leena and the principal then took her back to class.
Does she have her own room?
The social worker asked after Leena left. Space is tight, but we are making it work for now. Leena has her own bed on my sleeper. You saw the photos of her mom's apartment. She is comfortable, and if this turns into a long-term arrangement, I will get a bigger place, I replied. That seemed to satisfy them.
Because you are already vetted school system personnel, we are going to okay this arrangement for now.
To become her permanent guardian, you will have to move to a place where she can have her own room, being a girl.
We will follow up in 90 days.
Here are your temporary guardianship papers. Good luck.
By that time, school was about to dismiss. I took Leena to JCPenney, and we bought everything she would need clothes and supply-wise. Remember, I have or had a girl her age, so I was familiar with what she needed. After a quick McDonald's run, we then went to, where else? The library. We both still needed to study. After that, we headed home to get all of Leena's new clothes situated in a small dresser that I picked up on Craigslist. I realized that I could not feed this girl McDonald's every day. I wasn't much of a cook, but I could follow a cookbook. From then on, Leena and I cooked together pretty much every day. She would read the instructions, and I would complete the steps with her help. And with that, both our lives changed dramatically. There we were, two souls, both discarded by the people we thought loved us the most. And somehow, some way, we found each other. It finally all came together for me 2 months later when Leena called me Dad for the first time. At least I was able to hold it together long enough to get to my room before I broke down crying. Yes, I had lost Tony Jr. and my sweet little Crystal, but by the grace of God, he sent me Leena. I watched as she danced around our meager but cozy apartment to her favorite music. She was a little girl again, no longer responsible for things a 7-year-old should never have to think about. She would never be alone or feel unwanted again. And me, I was a dad again. No longer would I feel the emptiness in my heart that weighed down my spirit. The sting of my total rejection was replaced by the joy of knowing I had someone who depended on me. In many ways, we saved each other. Winter turned to spring. It was April. I'm now in the middle of writing my dissertation. I didn't need to be at the library every day anymore, but Leena and I still go at least twice per week after school. Speaking of Leena, she was thriving. She was happy, healthy, and doing well in school. I knew deep down that she missed her mother, though.
Dad, do you think the police will ever find my mom?
She asked as we ate another one of our favorite creations, homemade meatloaf and mashed potatoes. The police detective came to see me at school today. I told her, "They haven't heard anything yet. It appears that your mom may have left the country, but they are still looking, sweetie." Leena was always at my side. Since she always got out of school earlier than me, the principal at the elementary school would give her a ride to the high school every day. She would get started on her homework while I took care of my last few classes of the day. My students loved the adorable little girl. I always introduced her as my daughter Leena. I caught her choking back tears a couple of times after doing that. It warmed my heart. April turned into July as fast as you might expect. On the football field, Leena kept my notes and player rosters organized. She was a popular figure at practice, and my players considered her a good luck charm. By September, we had just celebrated Leena's 8th birthday. She was now entering the 3rd grade. Those deep brown eyes of hers have seen things that no ordinary 3rd grader should ever have to experience at that age. But in this perfect moment, she was just another little girl running up the main walkway on the first day of school. She gave me a big hug and kissed me on the cheek as I saw her off. I was able to hold my tears in until I got back to the car. By October of that year, I had successfully defended my dissertation and was set to graduate in December. I received my degree in October. It looks like we will be able to move to a 2-bedroom just after the first of the year when my raise kicks in. Dr. Meadows, that is going to take some getting used to. I never thought I'd make it to this point, but here I am. And with that, we arrived at November. In a few days, it would be a year since I first encountered Leena staring at that bag of potato chips stuck in the library vending machine. What a year it had been. I was done with my program and no longer needed to live in the library. I had to put a small study area in our living room for Leena. She loved it. But that day, on the anniversary of our vending machine moment, we went to the library. It felt so familiar. The smell of the floor wax, the soft buzzing sound, and hushed voices made us feel right at home. After an hour or so, we went home to cook. I had news for Leena. "Leena, how would you feel about me adopting you?" Leena only had one question in response.
Would that mean that you'll be my daddy for forever?
"Yes, sweetie, for forever, you and me," I replied. Leena then jumped into my arms and hugged me harder than she ever had. That was her answer. We would start the process after the first of the year. As Thanksgiving approached, my sister called. Her and her husband had moved across the country and invited me to her house for the holiday. I had confided in her about Leena at the beginning, so she knew I would be bringing a little guest. The trip was fun. Leena had never been on a plane before. Leena met my sister's 10-year-old son plus her 8- and 6-year-old daughters. They took to each other quickly. They all tumbled into the family room to play. As the kids played, my sister helped me get settled into the guest room. Leena would sleep in my sister's 8-year-old daughter's room.
"So, Tony, have you heard anything about Allison or the kids?"
she asked. I laughed. "It's been 30 months, I replied. I haven't heard a word from Tony Jr. or Crystal."
"Well, a few months after you left town, Allison married Stan Roberts. They then successfully filed paperwork making Stan the children's father and changing their last names from Meadows to Roberts. Allison also dropped Junior from your son's name.
He's not my son anymore, remember? I snipped.
Right. Tony, Stan left Allison back in January of this year.
My sister replied as she pressed on. Really? I asked.
Yeah, it turned out he met someone else at their job and he ditched Allison and the kids for her. Now he's paying Allison child support too. You should hire a new lawyer and try to get the child support that you pay her reduced or canceled. But that's not all.
She continued.
Allison has cancer, Tony. Brain cancer. And it's spreading fast. The doctors think that she may have 3 or 4 months left at most. She rented your former house out months ago. Again, you should hire a new lawyer to get the court to release you from your house-related obligations. She was never going to tell you about it because she is getting $2,500 from you every month. Allison is living with her parents. She has decided to do her hospice there when the time comes. Your kids are devastated.
Her kids, I corrected her.
Do you think you could ever forgive your children and take them in when Allison dies?
She asked. Just then I realized why she had invited Leena and I out here. She wants me to consider taking in the kids that disowned me and took the last name of their mother's lover after she bites the dust. It was a true ton of bricks moment. I can never be mad at my sweet sister. She is only thinking about the innocent children involved here. Even if I would consider it, there is a problem, I told her. Allison had me formally declared an unfit parent in open court. Plus, the children formally belong to Stan Roberts now.
Stan Roberts has just married the girl he left Allison for. He has no interest in your kids. He only pays child support for them, and he is trying to undo the adoption. It won't work though.
He wanted to take my place so bad now he can have the responsibility, I quipped. The next day, the Wednesday before Thanksgiving, my former father-in-law called me. He got right to the point.
Tony, I have absolutely no right to ask you for this favor after everything Allison has done to you. But she needs to see you. She will be gone in a few months and she just needs to see you.
You mean she wants to absolve her conscience? I interrupted bluntly.
Yes, I suppose you could look at it that way,
he said in a defeated tone.
Look, I'll make it worth your while,
he stated.
If you will agree to come here and meet with her for 1 hour, I will make her release you from the child support obligation.
She will do that and a lot more, I countered. She will immediately release the child support obligation. Then she will file a motion to come to open court in person and admit in front of a judge that she lied about me being an unfit parent. She may be charged with perjury, but I don't care. She knows that she was wrong, and she is going to clear my name. In addition, she will allow me to put our house on the market with me receiving 80% of the proceeds. That will reimburse me for all of the time I was paying her housing expenses while she wasn't even living in the house. She needs to post a full confession to all of her social media accounts, along with an apology to me and my mother, who had to endure ridicule as a result of her lies. Those posts can never be taken down, even after she dies. Finally, and most importantly, she will record a professional quality formal video statement declaring the following 4 things for posterity. 1. I was never an unfit parent to my children. 2. I was never abusive and I never mistreated her or the children in any way. 3. She will disclose the real reason why she left our marriage. 4. She will admit that she lied to the children about me not wanting them. When I get the court order dismissing the child support order, the house is listed for sale. The social media posts have been verified. I have received and approved the video, and we have attended court on the unfit parent case. I will meet with her. I asked him to get back to me and ended the call. I then put Allison's BS out of my mind. It was my first Thanksgiving with Leena, and I wanted to make sure it was perfect. The next day, before we sat for Thanksgiving dinner, we all sat around my sister's fireplace to pray and reflect on what we were thankful for that year. We all took turns speaking. My sister's husband and kids gave their thanks. My sister gave thanks for her family and for everyone being together. I then let Leena take her turn. She began in her cute little voice.
I am thankful for being allowed to be a little kid again. My mother wouldn't let me come home from school until after 9 o'clock because she was having company in our apartment. I went to the library to study and wait every day until I could go home. We barely ate, and I only had 2 changes of clothes. I constantly searched for loose change on the ground wherever I could find it. I usually had a couple of dollars in change. Every day, I would buy a bag of potato chips from the library vending machine and eat them with a Pop-Tart that I saved from my free breakfast at school. That was my dinner. It was better than starving. I washed my clothes in her bathroom sink every day and hung them there to dry. Other kids stared at me sometimes, but I ignored them. One day when I was at the library I was really hungry. I went to the vending machine, put my last dollar inside and my chips got stuck in the machine. Right then, I thought about giving up. I wasn't sure I could take it anymore, but then God sent an angel to me. He got the machine to let my chips go and then gave me half of his lunch. It was the most I had eaten after school in a long time. From there, I always studied at his table. He brought extra food for me, and when my mom left me, he took me in without even thinking about it. Soon, I will officially be adopted. I have a family. I'm safe, warm, fed and cared for. I miss my mom, but I wouldn't be here today if she hadn't left. I'm grateful for my dad and to be part of a real family.
Needless to say, we needed an extra box of tissues as we all were drenched in tears upon hearing Leena's words. It was my turn to speak. I am thankful for being allowed to be a dad again. I built a beautiful family and worked hard to take care of them. Then they were ripped away. Selfishness and greed motivated my former wife to manipulate my children into disowning me in favor of her lover. I felt like an outcast. I was lost, lonely, and feeling like my whole life had been meaningless to that point. I went to the library to work on my studies, but I mostly went to escape, to be somewhere where I didn't have to talk to anyone. I was existing, not much more. When my parental rights were taken away, I wanted to give up right then. One day I was planning Crystal's birthday, and the next, another man had moved into my house and my kids were calling him Daddy. When I thought about taking the job I have now, I considered it my last chance. If I didn't get my life turned around, I too was thinking about giving up. I saw Leena every day at the library. I wondered how anyone could leave such a sweet, vulnerable child alone to fend for herself. I immediately wanted to intervene, but I waited for the right moment. I had to know her story. The vending machine mishap brought us together. I lost 2 children, but God gave me one back. And I will love her and take care of her forever. She thinks I saved her, but I think it's really the other way around. I'm proud to be your dad. Leena and I then hugged again as the tissue box started circulating. We then had an amazing Thanksgiving dinner. Leena and I went home Friday morning. When we arrived home, I checked my email. Allison's dad had emailed me the filed child support release and a full power of attorney from Allison to put the house on the market and sell it. He also wrote that Allison is scheduled to film the video tomorrow and that a court hearing will be scheduled for her to renounce the unfit parent case as soon as we coordinate our visit. He also told me that she had composed the social media confession posts and unblocked me and my sister on everything so we can verify them. I wrote him back that if they will schedule the court hearing, I will work my visit around that. Whatever day the hearing is on, I will meet with Allison the next morning. I may hate her guts, but I have humanity. I'm sure she will be drained after coming to court to admit on the record that she committed perjury. Leena and I just relaxed at home Friday night. The next day, Allison's dad called me after he emailed Allison's finished video. Her dad must have some connections. He got a domestic relations judge to see us on that next Tuesday. I told him I would be there. I nervously pressed play on the email. Allison immediately appeared on the screen. She was clearly very sick. She wore a wig, most likely due to the chemo. I, Allison Roberts, hereby attest to all of the following. Allison covered all 4 points that I required. What's interesting is why she actually left me so suddenly. It turns out she had started her affair with Stan Roberts a year prior to her ambush and had gotten pregnant. She was running out of time to hide the pregnancy and needed to pull the trigger on leaving me. She said that ambushing me was Stan Roberts' idea. Throw in a few empty platitudes and meaningless apologies, and there you have it. I guess I was going back to my former town at least one last time. So the next Tuesday, I found myself sitting in the same courtroom where I was declared an unfit parent almost 3 years prior. Allison was there with her lawyer. I had hired a new lawyer to represent me for that brief hearing. Leena waited patiently in the back of the courtroom. The judge read Allison's motion and swore her in. As promised, Allison admitted in open court and on the record that she lied about me being an unfit parent. The judge immediately reversed the ruling made by the now retired judge who originally declared me unfit. He ordered my parental rights to be immediately restored once all of the paperwork and requirements were met. The court still had to deal with Stan's side of that mess. He also advised Allison that a criminal referral would be issued in the case for perjury. The hearing then adjourned. Leena and I went back to our hotel. As promised, I arrived at Allison's parents' home at 2 p.m. the next day. Her dad greeted me and led me back to where Allison was. I left Leena in our hotel suite playing video games. She was safe and comfortable. Allison was laying on a hospital bed that had been set up in what would normally be a dining room. She looked thin and frail.
Tony, Thanks for coming, my darling.
That's Dr. Meadows, if you would, Mrs. Roberts. Let's keep this formal. We no longer have any kind of a personal connection. I'm here at your request. Please tell me what I can do for you.
Okay, Dr. Meadows. My apologies. I'm sure you have a lot of questions.
Not anymore, I interrupted. I really don't care why anymore.
I was lost, Tony. I'm sorry, Dr. Meadows. I was going through postpartum depression, and Stan came along and swept me off of my feet. After I had been sleeping with him for a few months, I became pregnant by him. Stan agreed to marry me, but he wanted everything. Your house, your kids, and my hand in marriage. I foolishly agreed to the plan to ambush you that day instead of coming to you like an adult. Stan wanted me to turn the kids against you and take away your parental rights, to break your will to stay around. I foolishly went along. I married Stan a few months after you left town. I lost the pregnancy in the 5th month. 3 months after that, he left me for his personal assistant and moved out of state. The kids and I were devastated. 3 months after that, I went to the doctor complaining of severe headaches. That's when they found the cancer. I've been in declining health ever since. I completed chemo and radiation therapy. There is nothing more the doctors can do. I may have 3 months left. I know what I did to you is unforgivable, and I don't blame you for hating me. I agreed to all of your terms to get you here today to ask you if you would please consider allowing Tony and Crystal back into your home after I'm gone. My parents will not be able to finish raising them by themselves.
Where is Stan? I heard them call him Daddy. They said Stan was their daddy. They also told me to my face that they didn't want to see me anymore. I said with all of the coldness and hardness that I could muster.
They are 9 and 8 years old. They need you, Dr. Meadows. I'm begging you. They have nowhere else to go.
On paper, Stan is their legal father and next of kin. They need to go live with their daddy, I said as I moved to grab my coat.
My father and lawyer are working with Stan to get all of Tony and Crystal's parental rights transferred back to you.
How much is your life insurance? I asked her.
$1.5 million.
Allison weakly replied. I will meet with my former children to gauge their interest level. They would need to move to my city, and I want 50% of your life insurance money as compensation for the ambush and to offset expenses I will incur to incorporate them into my family. One more condition. My newly adopted daughter, Leena, will need to approve.
Dr. Meadows, these are your children.
No, they are not, Mrs. Roberts. They are you and Mr. Stan Roberts' children. I will meet with your children after all legal proceedings are complete. Please advise my attorney when you are ready, and I will come back. After talking to them alone, I will give you my decision. Have you ever considered that your miscarriage and illness are karma punishing you for what you did to me so unjustly? I asked.
Every single mother flipping day.
She replied.
I apologize, Dr. Meadows, for everything. You were the best husband, lover, and friend that I could have ever had. But I blew it with my greed and selfishness. God is punishing me for what I did to one of his angels. I'm convinced of that, Dr. Meadows, and I accept my punishment. All I ask is that I be allowed to die in peace. The last thing holding me back is making sure Tony and Crystal will be taken care of. Dr. Meadows, they were 6 and 5 years old when I left and ambushed you. I manipulated them into hating you to satisfy Stan. God has already dispensed his punishment to me for everything I did to you. Please don't extend that punishment to Tony and Crystal. I confessed everything to them a few weeks ago. They are devastated that I took their real father away from them, and they refuse to see or speak to me.
Allison was in full crocodile tears mode now. As she cried, I put my coat on. Let me know when all of the legal work is done and I will come back and meet with them, I said as I walked out of the door. I thanked Allison's dad for inviting me and left to pick up Leena. We met the realtor to sign the contract as she had already found a buyer for my old house. Allison is giving me all of the proceeds, by the way. Guilt is a powerful thing, I guess. A week later, Leena and I returned to my former town for what I hoped would be the last time for a while. It was time to face my former children. Allison's dad brought Tony and Crystal, now ages 9 and 8, to my lawyer's office. I asked Leena to stay in the reception area and wait for me a few minutes. I would call for her as soon as I was ready. I entered the room. Tony and Crystal looked like normal 8 and 9-year-old kids. They were clean and well-groomed. They both had tears in their eyes. "Hello, Tony." "Crystal," I said with cold formalness. Tony spoke first.
"We don't know what to say, Dad."
I was about to tell him that I wasn't their dad, but remembering Allison's words, I held my fire and let him continue. "Say what's in your heart," I said more gently this time.
"We just didn't know,"
Tony said.
Mom said you didn't love us anymore and that you had left us.
Crystal said.
She also told us that Stan would be our daddy and that we should forget about you. Stan was awful. He was mean and he never took us anywhere. Mommy was pregnant with his child, but...
Crystal trailed off. "I know. It's okay," I told Crystal.
"We were happy when Stan moved out. Then Mom got really sick,"
Tony said.
Since then, things have been hard.
Crystal added, "It would not have been hard for your mother to find me. I live about 50 miles away and I work for another public school system. I wasn't hiding. Had either of you thought about reaching out to me?"
"Yes, every day,"
Tony said.
Mommy would not find you for us. She said you didn't want us anymore. And like dummies, we believed it.
Crystal said.
We never stopped loving you, Daddy.
Crystal added. "What did each of you tell that judge in court that day when my parental rights were stripped away?"
Mom and Stan coached each of us on what to say. She told us to say that you were angry all of the time because of being a Marine.
"She admitted that she lied about all of it."
She lied on you, Dad. She lied on us. She lied on our family. We are ashamed of how we treated you, Daddy. Could you ever find it in your heart to forgive us?
It was in that very moment that I heard Leena's voice from her statement by the fire on Thanksgiving. I couldn't hold back the tears. I hugged my children and told them that I forgave them. They melted into my embrace. "There are many things that you both need to know," I told them. They quieted themselves and paid attention. "You have a sister."
"Did you have a baby with someone, Dad?"
Tony asked. "No, son." "Hold on." I called for Leena. She walked into the room. "Tony Jr., Crystal, this is Leena. She is your sister. I am adopting her." "Leena, this is your big brother Tony and your sister Crystal." The children hugged each other and sat down at the table.
Dad and I met at the library in our city. He saved me from a dreadful life.
We found each other in a fog of loneliness, calamity, and despair. I explained to Tony and Crystal, "She is my child just as much as each of you are. Can you accept that?" I asked them.
Yes, Daddy. We love that we have a sister our age.
Crystal said. "Second, I want you two to make up with your mother. She is already being punished by God for what she did to all of us. Please allow her to die knowing that her kids love her. It's okay to both love her and be disappointed in her at the same time." They both nodded their heads in agreement. "Leena and I will return to our city today. I will return to attend your mother's funeral when the time comes. After that, you two will move with us to our city. I'm warning you, it's not the suburbs. Will you be okay with that?" Both kids nodded. "Finally, both of you have Stan Roberts' name, and Tony, they dropped Jr. from your name. Do you want to return to your original names?" Both kids yelled yes. With that, we had a plan. Allison died 6 weeks after that meeting. She was surrounded by her parents, Tony and Crystal. After Allison's funeral, I met with my attorney and collected the $750,000 check from her life insurance. I also received $250,000 from the sale of the house after paying off the mortgage. I deposited $200,000 into a college fund for each of the children. I also put a down payment on a nice 4-bedroom, 4-bath home near my high school. We moved in about 6 weeks after Allison's funeral. I accepted my parental rights back from Stan Roberts and changed the kids' names back to their original form. I also got to change another kid's name. Leena is now officially Carolina Salazar Reyes Meadows. By the way, Stan Roberts was also charged with perjury for the lies he told to the court in my parental rights case. He was sentenced to 3 years in prison. Leena's mother was never found or heard from again. Her information is still in the National Missing Person database. I was eventually promoted to building principal at Crosstown High. I loved the job and the community loved me back. It wasn't easy all of the time, but Tony Jr., Crystal, Leena, and I grew into a real family. I was very happy and grateful.
Hi, this is Leena Salazar Reyes Meadows.
The events that you just heard happened over 20 years ago, from the point in the story where my dad left off. Junior, Crystal, and I enjoyed the warmest, happiest, and most fulfilling childhood imaginable. All three of us graduated from high school and attended college thanks to the generous college funds that Dad put away for us so many years ago. A few years after we moved into the house, Dad found love again and remarried. Gloria was every bit a mom to us and treated all three of us as if she had given birth to us herself. Junior is currently serving in the Marine Corps, just like my dad and my grandfather before him. He is a second lieutenant. Crystal works in public relations in Los Angeles and is engaged to a writer. Me? I became a teacher, like my dad before me. And about my dad. I need to read this to you. It's from 3 years ago. Dr. Anthony Meadows Sr., principal of Crosstown High School, and his wife, Mrs. Gloria Meadows, were killed last night when their vehicle was struck by a drunk driver on Central Parkway. A pickup went left of center and hit their vehicle head-on. They are survived by their son, 2nd Lieutenant Anthony Meadows Jr., 29, USMC, and daughters Crystal Meadows, 28, of Los Angeles, and Carolina Salazar Reyes Meadows, 28, of Crosstown. Funeral arrangements are pending. That was what the news reported. We later found out from the police what actually happened that night. That out-of-control pickup went left of center over the guardrail and was heading right for a family whose car had broken down on the side of the road. In a split-second decision, Dad rammed the truck head-on with his car to stop it from hitting that family. Dad and Gloria gave their lives in a selfless act to save that family from certain death. For his heroism, Dad is buried in Arlington National Cemetery in Washington, D.C. Gloria was cremated at her request, and the urn containing her ashes was buried in Dad's casket. I wasn't surprised that he died saving the lives of others. He had already saved one life. Mine. I'll never forget the way he looked at me that day in the library when I could not get my chips out of that vending machine. I was sad, lonely, hungry, and had just about run out of hope to keep living. His eyes were so warm and caring. I knew that I was safe with him, and from that day on, my hope was restored. We were all sad that Dad and Gloria were taken from us. But many years ago, Dad told me something that has comforted me until this day. It was right after my mother disappeared. I was a scared 7-year-old not knowing what the future might have in store. Every time I got sad or felt like I could not make it, he repeated those words to me, and I was able to sleep and move on to the next day. I repeated the words to myself every night before I went to sleep. Some nights I still do. I remember.
God only allows us to keep His angels for so long. They watch over us and protect us. We shouldn't grieve when an angel has to depart from us. Now another soul needs to be blessed by that angel. And we are grateful for the time that we had with them.
The end. We hope you enjoyed this special holiday presentation of Gratefulness Unchained. Happy holidays from Ace of Hearts-Storycast. As always, please subscribe, like, share, and follow us on your favorite social media networks.